Have you ever wondered whether Asia session trading is bad or good for your trading? You must have seen all these videos from all these other YouTubers, traders, gurus, whatever, talking about how Asia session is not volatile, it's awful, and do not trade Asia session. However, today I'm here to basically break down that stereotype about my boy Asia session because that is not always the case and not always true for each and every asset. So today we'll start on gold and then we'll work our way to indices like ES. But essentially here I'm here to just disprove that theory that no, there is a lot of still good opportunities in Asia session that people are just missing out on. Now there's a difference if you have limited time or you just want the time freedom and you want to trade the best session, then yes, go for the most volatile session, which is typically New York session. But what I'm saying is if you have the time and the brain power to trade more and look for get more if you want more opportunities, you should most definitely be looking into trading Asia session as well. I'm going to show with my indicator today. Okay, my indicator basically shows what it did to the new update is it shows the range of values for each session now. So we'll be seeing basically the kill zone session timing of Asia session and the range size. So range is 210 ticks. London session is 372. New York session here was 257. This is on gold, 5-minute chart, right? Chart time actually does not really matter, or time frame does not matter. But this is very recent, and this is when gold is extremely volatile. We are already at 3.2k on gold, right? And you can see the range in Asia session was literally almost the same as the New York session range, meaning the volatility was almost the exact same. Now this does not factor in one thing I will mention. Your TPs will hit slower, a lot slower obviously within Asia session than New York session, but not all the case, not always, but typically they are a little bit slower, right? It takes a little bit longer to hit your TP, like maybe this short. If you take the short here, it would have taken a little bit longer to hit your TP than if you were trading New York session, where you could get your TP within, 10 or less candles, right? 10 minutes or less on the 1 minute. But the point is the range in terms of volatility, it's not necessarily that much different. 210 versus 257. Now, this is one example. So let's just go back. Let's see more examples here. We see Asia session here is 543 ticks. What happens here now? London session, guess what, is the one that has lowest range now, only 220 ticks, right? And I have it set in ticks because it's a lot more comparable proportionally than if I was to set it based on points, because points between assets would not be proportional at all. But you can see there's a huge movement in Asia session. There's a huge expansion move. London, we just had a retracement or mitigation phase, and we had another massive expansion during New York session for 558 ticks, which is insane. Let me turn off my PY indicator here so you guys can see everything clear, right? That should help out a lot. Yeah, it definitely does. But you can see how it's not always true that Asia session has low volatility. Look at the averages here. What do we have? We have Asia session at 387, London session at 403, New York session at 466. And again, my indicator here is highlighting the most volatile times during that session, and that's the range during the most volatile kill zone timing. So you can see they're roughly in the same ballpark. Okay, if you go over here, Asia session here has more range than London session. There's a bigger move in Asia session than London session. And Asia session here has more range than even New York session. Isn't that crazy? So all these gurus online telling you certain thing about Asia session, you can't make money in Asia session, they're just completely lying to you, and they're just basically repeating what they heard from other people telling the same stuff. If you haven't noticed yet, a lot of people online, a lot of traders, fake traders online, all they do is repeat information they heard from other traders that they think are profitable, but they're not. I won't call out any names, but I'm just saying, like when I watch some of their videos, I know certain things they say that don't make sense to me. It just isn't true also, right? Okay, so Asia session 220 has more volatility than New York. And look at this one. Look at this. Look at this, guys. Asia session, 974 ticks. 974 ticks. I don't think many of you guys realize how much that is. I'm gonna move this camera down a bit, but 974 ticks is a ton. It's a huge move. And look at the range in London session. It's tiny compared to Asia session. Even New York session is only half of Asia session, right? Look at how big of an expansion. You would think, if I hide everything, you would have thought, and if you couldn't see the time, you would have thought this was Asia session or New York session here. But no. What if I told you this was literally Asia session, not New York session? That made a 2% move. A 2% move. Now let's keep going. Asia session here is 300 ticks. London session, okay, you can say these are equal. What is New York session? This is, okay, in this case, New York session had a way bigger range. Makes sense, right? New York session 800. Asia session 200, which is more than London session. So again, a lot of people, they, in the other side of the world, they would trade London session because they can't trade New York session due to sleep time, you know, things like that, right? Or just timing in general, or availability. So they trade London session, but they completely ignore Asia session for some reason. They still completely ignore Asia session, despite what I've seen so far is Asia session seems to have about the same volatility as London. In this case, it's less. London had a bigger move, and New York session even had a smaller day than London, right? So I would say there isn't a huge correlation in point in completely avoiding trading certain sessions just because of what you hear online. You want to go and test this yourself and look at the chart. And it's actually easier to test when you have an indicator that is coded to do all this testing for you. This is why I include the range so people can see truly whether or not we're in good conditions or bad conditions, or just overall to see, I mean, the tradability, right? Like, I'm not here highlighting with my measure tool every single session ticks. I can just see it with an algorithm, an indicator. Look at this. Asia session has more range, more volatility than London session and New York session. Like, come on, man. Let's see. Asia session has basically the same amount of volatility as New York session, and London session has the lowest here, right? In fact, a lot of times what I've noticed from my personal trading is I make more during Asia session than London session. A lot of people would laugh and think I'm trolling, but I'm not. I'm being dead serious. All right, we're at the end here of the timeline. But look at this. Asia session is obviously lower, less than both of these sessions here, but you've seen so many other times where it's also had more, if not equal, volatility, right? So definitely a lot of things you need to be considering next time when you listen to, fake news on YouTube, people just spreading I would say misinformed knowledge and just hating on certain sessions when they don't realize there's still a lot of volatility and money to be made in these other sessions. Let me see how far I can go back from here actually. Look at a few more data points, because sample size is important, right? Asia session has more range than London and New York. How about here? We have Asia session has the lowest here. Big gap right there. Asia session has the lowest here. Asia session has roughly the same here. Asia session has the lowest here, but not by much, right? Compared to London session, it's about the same. It's about the same with London session here. And we can always expect, like a general rule of thumb, I will agree with, no matter what, is New York session will majority of times be the most volatile, just because of New York Stock Exchange and many other New York traders, or people trading on the New York time zone. It doesn't have to be split in the New York time zone, but you guys know what I mean, right? That atmosphere of the world. Of course, there's going to be the most money imported during that time. But you can see Asia session, more range than London session. And over here, 137, 115, not much significant difference. You would have just missed out on 115 ticks of potential opportunity here if you just completely avoided trading Asia session there. Over here, Asia session is a bit lower than London, about the same here, roughly the same here, roughly the same here as well. I mean, you can see this one is definitely lower, that they're like, this is more than London session, right? And more than New York session here. So I would say the main takeaway, if you were for trading sessions is just find what works best for you in terms of time. What fits your schedule the best? What session fits your schedule the best? And if you could trade all 3 sessions, great. If you have the psychology also and the mental willpower to do so, because it's not easy mentally to trade all 3 sessions. You know? Time is one thing, but mental capacity is another thing that you have to consider.